One of the biggest news bits of the last few weeks was when Puck Magazine's Matt Belloni came out and reaffirmed not only is Kathleen Kennedy going to be stepping down, but gave us a timeline. And we're entering the latter half of that timeline. So if Matt Belloni's right, expect something later this week or maybe even the following one. But one of the bigger things, in fact, the biggest thing, Wall Street is going to be looking for from the Walt Disney Company this year is not some failed studio head shifting of power. It's going to be who is going to take over the top spot as Bob Iger leaves. And right now, while the chairman, Jim Gorman, formerly of Morgan Stanley, is hot on the heels of making that decision, one of the things I posited a little out of hand just a few months ago, well, maybe there's actually more to it than I thought. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see all of you out there once again. And if you are like one of the many watching this video not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Make sure to join us every Sunday and Wednesday afternoon right here at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show. We've been talking about some of Matt Belloni's predictions in Hollywood for 2026. Of course, one of the most famous of which up to this point, if not the most famous, was the prediction about Kathleen Kennedy we reiterated in the intro to this video. But, well, there's another one in a recent follow-up piece. And look who is in the headline image right there at the beginning of the article. And here's the crux of it. According to Matt Belloni, his prediction, although this is not a certainty, he doesn't have an inside scoop on this, but he seems to feel fairly strongly that the Walt Disney Company will name two CEOs. I'm going to go out on a limb, says Belloni, and say that Josh D'Amaro and Dana Walden will be co-CEOs of the Walt Disney Company. As we know, Josh D'Amaro has the operating experience from the parks division, but not the talent relationships. And Walden has talent chops from running the TV division, but of course not film, yet doesn't have the operating experience, at least nowhere near what Josh D'Amaro has.
If you consider failure experience.
I figured that given the Bob Chapek debacle, the Disney board might hesitate to give D'Amaro the keys on his own, even though he presents much more like a Bob Iger than a Bob Chapek. But content is king for Disney, and including Dana as a co-CEO would make that clear, as would giving her 51% decision-making power over the film, TV, and digital units, with Josh taking similar stake in parks, consumer products, gaming, and the other business unit lands of the Magic Kingdom. Having co-CEOs, honestly, in 2026 is becoming a more and more common occurrence. We've talked about it before just in the entertainment industry. Look at what Paramount was dealing with prior to the buyout of David Ellison. You effectively had three CEOs there, albeit they were in the interim. And then, of course, you've got Netflix, which still has co-CEOs and has had them for years with Ted and Greg. And that seems to have worked out just fine. What if, indeed, the Walt Disney Company becomes the next one? Because that was my very speculation several months ago. Looking at Dana Walden, certainly I never thought that she had the chops to take the top spot, especially because the Walt Disney Company is a theme park-first company. But Belloni makes an excellent point that Bob Iger has always treated the theme parks with a lot of reverence, but at the same time seems to put a lot more energy himself personally into the Hollywood side, because he is a Hollywood creature by nature. And Dana Walden seemed to be the front runner for that top job not even a year ago at this point. But of course, as we've spoken about since then, once Kamala Harris lost the presidential election, which was Dana Walden's, well, one of her good friends from their schwanky Brentwood neighborhood outside of Los Angeles where all the super rich elites live, well, that put a question mark over Dana. Certainly, I think if Kamala Harris had won and beaten Donald Trump, which was very unlikely to happen in almost any Marvel multiverse, well, then she might have gotten in, but that didn't happen. So then the pendulum swung back to Josh D'Amaro, which I think from a business perspective between Dana Walden and Josh D'Amaro, he certainly had the operating procedures down pat, because again, the parks is probably by far and away the most complex and, quite frankly, the most lucrative financial division for the Walt Disney Company that there is. Belloni continues, of course, Bob Iger is still supposed to be a presence through the year so he could hypothetically familiarize Josh with the creatives during that time. Still, while I don't know if board chair James Gorman has any desire to be deferential to Iger on his way out, I feel Iger clearly favored Dana Walden, and she could argue that she has experience making a partnership work based on her days at Fox, where she was paired with Gary Newman atop the TV unit. I'd be a little leery of having a pure television, and not even film studio, but just television studio executive suddenly atop the biggest entertainment company on earth, at least in terms of it sitting in the Dow Jones Industrial 30. I mean, no other big entertainment company is in there but Disney. They're there to represent that space. Nobody else has a footprint like Disney when it comes to theme parks. And quite frankly, nobody else has a footprint like Disney when it comes to film and television combined. Now, granted, we have to take into account the fact that the film unit, at least in the last 6 or 7 years, or maybe even a few years before that, if you go back to when things were greenlit, has certainly taken a hell of a nosedive, and that's from every studio they have. Sure, there's been some recent hits for the Walt Disney Company, and yes, Disney Plus is, well, it's out there, but is it actually relevant? I'm not so sure. And Hulu is just starting to get its feet under it, but then again, how many times do we see a big hit on Hulu popping up throughout the year, week to week, on something like Nielsen or the Luminate charts at Variety magazine? It's actually a pretty rare occurrence. It's more often that we find things in terms of library content running up the chart for Hulu. Basically things that have been sitting there for a while, old television shows that people go back and binge. Netflix oftentimes has a very, very robust catalog and viewership for things like that as well. But then again, Netflix also produces a ton of brand new content that comes out each and every week. And that content, that brand new content, is oftentimes, almost without fail, at the very top of Nielsen and Luminate charts week in and week out with rare exception. Dana Walden's track record in terms of her experience running television studios at two of the biggest that Hollywood has ever had to offer, first Fox and now the Walt Disney Company, co-chairing alongside Alan Bergman, who runs the film side while Dana runs TV. You know, maybe there's something to it there. But then again, if we're going to have a Hollywood executive that's going to co-run, co-manage, co-CEO the Walt Disney Company alongside Josh D'Amaro, who has done his job for years running the park side since Bob Chapek stepped down to become, or rather stepped up to become CEO, at least for 10 months, then maybe it should be Alan Bergman. I mean, certainly, if you want somebody in there who's got the Hollywood presence and the film star presence, Bergman is probably a more solid shot than maybe Dana Walden. But then again, do you really want to have two white guys running the Disney Company at this point? Or do they want to go with the DEI split and give one side to Josh D'Amaro, the traditional white guy, and then give a female a chance to run at least a part of Disney? I'm not saying those two couldn't work together, and I'm not saying that a co-CEO is the worst idea on earth. As we said before, it's been done many, many times through other companies, especially more recently. But is it really a good idea with those two? Is it really a good idea to have Dana Walden involved at all? Although stranger things have happened. And the big question that Matt Belloni points out is really, what is James Gorman's preference?
I don't like girls.
At the end of the day, you have to wonder how much Gorman is really taking advice from Bob Iger on a successor. Is he listening to what Bob Iger has to say? Is he hearing him? Is he taking it in? Is he going to use it? Certainly, Iger is going to have some degree of presence with Jim Gorman, but at the same time, Gorman has to answer to Wall Street a lot more than he has to answer to Iger. Is Gorman the kind of guy that would go ahead and slate two CEOs at the Walt Disney Company? Would be interesting. And again, we've theorized about it before. But now with Matt Belloni thinking that is also a possibility, it is, well, it's kind of perked up my antenna again on this one. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.